Hello?
Hi, it's Libby.
Hi, are you a midwife?
I am a midwife, yes.
Oh, I don't think I've met you before. Okay, well, I think I'm in labor and, looking for advice. It's hospital time.
This?
Mm-hmm.
Serious?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you're okay to go.
Yeah, it's gonna friggin' suck, but...
Oh, that's exciting. Okay, camera bag. Regular bag. Okay, and the baby bag. Okay, that's all good. Feeling good. There's garbage behind my seat. We gotta just drop it off on the way down.
Okay.
Okay.
So we're heading to the hospital. Midwife said I might still be in early labor, but we're like 20-30 minutes from the hospital, so I want to go. Anyways, I might get sent home, but we'll see.
Hey guys, welcome back to Embers and Ash. My name's Ashley, if you didn't know, and today I wanted to share with you guys my labor and delivery story. So I brought camera equipment to the hospital with full intentions of vlogging the whole thing, but when it came down to it, I found that I really would rather be experiencing it than trying to focus on getting good shots. So I do have some footage of it, but it's mostly at the beginning and then at delivery. So I'm gonna kind of combine my birth story and my birth vlog into one video, kind of explain to you guys everything that happened, and then as I have clips, I'll throw those in. Sound good? Great. So if you've seen my third trimester expectations video, you'll know that I had early labor. I think there's another name for it, but anyways, where I had a couple instances that I was woken up in the middle of the night from contractions thinking I was going into labor, and then they went away. So the day that I actually went into labor, I was a little unsure, but it did definitely feel different. So I woke up at about 3 a.m. with contractions, and I stayed in bed till around 4, just kind of dealing with them. But it got to a point where they were quite painful, and I didn't want to wake Josh up, because previous times with my false labor, I had woken Josh up just from me squirming and being in pain, and that ruined his sleep, and he had to go to work the next day because I didn't actually go into labor. So when the contractions got pretty bad, I left the room and I went into our spare bedroom and would just rest on an exercise ball and try and manage the pain. Well, eventually it got pretty intense, and the difference is that with my false labor, it was just contractions in my stomach, but when I was actually going into labor, it felt like I had to poop my pants. So every contraction, it felt like I had a really bad bowel movement coming on, and then after the contraction, I would go to the toilet to try and pass that movement, and nothing would happen. And it took quite a few contractions for me to realize, oh wait, maybe this is a contraction, not diarrhea. And when I called the midwife on call, it was some lady with like an English accent, and I was like, are you with my midwifery? And she's like, yup. And I'm like, I've never met you before. It was a very confusing conversation, but I was in pain, so I went with it. Turns out she was standing in for one of our midwives, but she didn't tell me that. So I was just like, who the heck are you? Anyways, she said that she thinks I'm going into labor, but it's still early labor, and that I should labor at home for longer, because if you go to the hospital too early, the adrenaline can actually like stop your labor. So I was like, okay, well, when should I come? And she said, oh, you'll know when you're ready to go to the hospital. Well, sure enough, like 15 minutes later, I was like, I'm sick of this. I want to go to the hospital, even if it's early, because I hate laboring at home, and the hospital is like a half hour away. So by the time I get there, I should be further progressed, right? So I call her back, and she says again, I think you're still in early labor. So she said I can go, but she's not gonna meet me there until the nurses check me, and if I'm dilated enough, then she'll run over to the hospital. And I was like, sweet. So I walked over to the bedroom and woke Josh up very excited, saying that we're going to the hospital, and he was very excited because he actually asked me to go into labor that night because he had a job at work that he didn't want to do. So it worked out great for everyone. So Josh was frantically trying to pack up the house, and I told him there's no rush. I'm in early labor. We can take it easy. But of course his head is racing. Also, this was like the one evening this week that we didn't tidy the house before bedtime because we knew labor could potentially be coming. We had been keeping the house as clean as possible. But yeah, so we left the house a mess, but that's fine. So we packed everything up, got into the car, headed over. So we got to the hospital and we walked up to the front entrance, and sure enough, it said main entrance open 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. because of like COVID stuff, and it was around 6 a.m. at this point. So I was like, what am I supposed to do? So I called a midwife and I'm like, hey, where am I supposed to go? And she told me that I have to go to the emergency entrance. So we did that, and they basically unlocked this kind of side door for us, and we went like this back route way to the maternity ward. It was very strange. So we get up to the maternity ward and a nurse comes and checks my dilation, and sure enough, I am 3 to 4 centimeters dilated, but I need to be a solid 4 centimeters dilated to be admitted. So the nurse went and talked to, I don't know, her colleagues, and she came back and she suggested that since we don't live super close by, we can take the time right now to just go walk around the parking lot for the next hour and come back, and hopefully I will have progressed further. Otherwise, I just have to go home. So we did that, and it actually worked out well because in our rush to get out of the house, we didn't have breakfast, so we took a nice drive to Tim Hortons, bought some bagels, got a coffee, and then we just did laps around the hospital parking lot, which honestly was pretty nice. Like, it was a beautiful morning, the sun was rising. They have a little like gravel path, I guess for people who are there long term, they have a nice pathway for them to walk. So it was fine, except the contractions were pretty painful, and they were getting a lot closer together, and by the end of that 1 hour mark, I had like 5 contractions in 4 minutes as I'm like trying to make my way back to the entrance of the hospital. And of course, at the 1 hour mark, it's 7 a.m. so we could go through the main entrance, which was nice. And so we get upstairs and they're like, how are you doing? And I'm like, well, I'm contracting, that's for sure. And they check me, and sure enough, I am 5 to 6 centimeters dilated, which was super exciting because that was like 2 centimeters dilation in 1 hour, which for a first-time mom, I was stoked. So they're like, okay, let's get the show on the road. Do you want any pain meds? And I said, eventually I want an epidural, but I want to labor naturally first because I know it can slow down labor. And they said, okay, yeah, for sure. We're just going to kind of get you set up so that when you're ready for the epidural, we'll have everything in place. And I was like, okay, cool. So for the epidural, you need to be put on an IV, so they got that set up right away. But also I was GBS positive, which is just like some bacteria thing, I don't know. So I needed to be put on antibiotics anyways, so that was fine. It was funny though, because the nurse that came to set up my IV was like, I don't know if you're gonna make it to the epidural, you're progressing really fast. And I was like, really? And she's like, wait, is this your second baby? And I was like, no, it's my first. And she said, okay, you'll be fine, but you're gonna have the baby by noon. And I was like, frick, okay. So it's 7 a.m. at this point, keep in mind. So I was like, oh my gosh, that would be very quick for my first baby. So once I had my IV put in, they moved me from this, I guess, waiting room to the actual room that I would be delivering the baby in. And we got set up with a nurse who I didn't know at the time, but she was with us for the whole labor and delivery, and she was amazing, like the sweetest lady ever. She was so good. I don't know if typically midwives are supposed to stay with you the whole time that you're laboring, but mine didn't. But she also had another client giving birth in the hospital at the same time, so maybe that's why. I don't know. It was fine because our nurse was awesome. So I get placed in this room, I get this nurse, and the midwife that I had the phone call with comes in, and I meet her for the first time, and she tells me that she's just filling in for the time being. But there was a switch over with the midwives at 9 o'clock, so I would be getting my regular midwife by 9, which was perfect, and it was the midwife that I wanted, so happy day for me. And then all of a sudden the epidural guy comes in, and I was like, oh, I guess we're doing this now. It happened just very suddenly, and I didn't want to say no to it because I didn't want to miss my opportunity for the epidural, but I definitely was still like fine. Like, I had my contractions, they were manageable. I wasn't expecting to get my epidural right away, but I think they fast-tracked it because I was progressing so fast and they were worried that I would miss my opportunity, which honestly, I'm not mad about it because I would much rather get my epidural early than miss my opportunity and have to feel my baby coming out of me. Like, I'm fine with feeling the contractions, but I am just so scared of feeling the baby come out. Anyways, epidural guy comes in, and sure enough, he looks like a psychopath, but he was the nicest guy ever, and the nurse told me prior that like this is the good guy, like the guy who really knows what he's doing is working right now. So when he did come in and I saw how scary he looked, I wasn't too scared. But I do wish that I had asked someone prior what it's like to get an epidural, because when they were setting me up for it, I realized that I didn't know what to expect, and I was a little freaked out because it's a huge needle going into your spine, and I didn't want him to tell me like what he was doing because I was scared that he would give me too much information. And then Josh hates needles, so he's kind of freaking out in the corner, and I told him to leave the room, but he wanted to support me, but he wasn't really being a support because he was just like sitting in a chair in the corner terrified, so I was like holding the nurse's hands while I was getting it. And sure enough, honestly, it was no big deal at all. Like, there's a little shot of anesthesia in your spine, and it just feels like getting any old shot, and then you don't even feel the epidural needle going in, so it was amazing. And then they finished me all up and I laid down, and it's kind of a weird system. Like, they have a button where you can kind of add more drugs as you need, which is cool, and there's a limit on it so you don't overdose. But basically my nurse said at any point when you start to feel contractions, hit the button even if it doesn't really hurt, because if you don't, you can kind of fall behind and you have to play catch up with the contractions and then potentially give birth not with enough drugs. So I just tried to stay on top of giving myself drugs. So basically from, I don't know, it was like 8 o'clock when I got the epidural. From 8 till 11, I just hung out. Because I had the GBS positive, I couldn't get checked very frequently in case the bacteria got transferred to the baby. So I had to wait till 11 o'clock when I got my second dose of antibiotics and they would check me again. But as I was waiting, I was asking the nurse, like, am I supposed to feel things still with an epidural? Because I'm feeling nothing. And sure enough, like, you should be feeling the tightening of your stomach but no pain, and I didn't feel the tightening. So leading up to 11 o'clock, I kind of expected that I wasn't progressing anymore. Also, in the meantime, Josh and I took some naps, we hung out, we chatted, we got to know the nurse. It's really funny, like, I didn't realize how chill labor would be with an epidural. Even though I knew it took the pain away, I don't know, like, Josh and I wish that we had brought some card games or something, because we were just hanging out for 3 hours, just waiting. So eventually I got to 11 a.m. and they checked me and I was 6 centimeters dilated, which was a bummer. But she said that I could be stretched to 9 centimeters, so her words were like, your cervix isn't preventing you from having the baby, you just need contractions to push the baby down. Also during this time, my nurse said that I needed to try and pee, which I was very nervous for, because if you can't pee on your own, you have to get a catheter in, and I really didn't want a catheter, as you can expect, and so I had to use all my might to try and figure out how to pee. Also, if you don't know what it's like to have an epidural, you can still like feel your legs and like move them, but you don't have like full control over them, and then specifically you lose control of your bladder. Now, the nurse was telling me during this that I was having exceptional control of my legs still, so I was feeling confident in my pee abilities. Josh was napping at the time, so she gave me this like cardboard cup thing to sit on and pee in, and so I kind of sat on my shins and squatted on it. She left the room and I was like, pee, 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 like focusing so hard. I heard it happen and I was like, perfect, I peed, I took it out, yes, there was pee in there, fantastic. She came back in and took it away. And then I went to readjust myself to sit back in bed, and I was like, why does my foot feel weird? And I go and feel it, and sure enough, I peed all over my feet. So yeah, I peed in the cup, but I pulled it out too early and just kept peeing all over my feet without realizing it. So that was fun. She changed my bed sheets, I changed my socks, and we were good. So the next steps that they told me they wanted to take was to break my water, which also was a weird experience because I didn't feel any of it because I had the epidural, but they basically take this like huge plastic crochet hook essentially and like put it up there and just kind of hook it onto the sac and it breaks and whatever. I don't know, it was strange. And I did feel that that started my contractions back up, which was really exciting. So again, I wasn't in pain, but I was feeling the tightening. And they said, if this helps you progress all the way, then perfect. If not, we're gonna look at giving you oxytocin, which I was like, okay, why not? At the time, I didn't realize that oxytocin is Pitocin, because I only ever hear people saying Pitocin, not oxytocin. And I had heard horror stories of Pitocin because it gets your contractions going, but it makes your contractions a lot more painful. And I've heard of a lot of people having to play catch up with their epidural, but then their epidural slowing their labor down again, and then needing more Pitocin, then more epidural, and I was just scared of that. But at the time, I was like, oh, oxytocin, whatever, sure, I don't know what that is. Anyways, so my contractions had progressed from breaking the water, but after like a half hour, they stopped again, and I was like, okay, we're gonna have to do this oxytocin thing, hit me up with it. And then as they're setting it up, I was like, so what's the deal with Pitocin? And she's like, oh, that's this, like that is oxytocin. And I was like, oh. And so I asked, I was like, is this gonna like cause issues with my epidural? And I told her my fears, and she's like, no, like that rarely happens, you're gonna be fine, it's just gonna help you progress. And I was like, okay, cool. So it's like 12 o'clock right now, which is when that one nurse said I was gonna have the baby. And honestly, if I didn't have the epidural, I would bet that I would have had the baby at that point. But like I said, the epidural just like stopped my labor, which was fine. So I have the oxytocin dripping through my body, and I'm just hanging out again, and the midwife comes in and she like feels my belly or something, I don't know, and she's like, oh, the baby's actually sunny side up, and you want the baby sunny side down for delivery because just the shape of everything, it goes smoother. Like you can deliver a baby sunny side up, but it's a lot harder. I don't know. So she said, we need to try and flip the baby. And I was like, okay, how are we gonna do that? So she gets this like exercise ball that's in the shape of a peanut, and she says, you're just gonna lay on your side and put this between your legs and switch sides, and moving around like that should flip the baby because the baby wants to be the other way. So they bring the peanut ball over, and I just go and like whip my leg over top of it, and they're like, you're not supposed to be able to do that because of the epidural. And I was like, I don't know, man, I still feel great. I still have control of my legs. So that was funny. Also in the meantime, while I was waiting, Josh went down to the Starbucks downstairs, which was still open, thankfully, got me a refreshing drink. I wasn't supposed to be eating food at the time, but the nurse knew that I was hungry and I hadn't eaten since 7 a.m. and so she snuck me a muffin, which was so nice of her. Thank you. And then eventually it was around 3 o'clock, I think. I asked the nurse like, hey, when am I gonna get checked again because we don't know what's happening. And at that moment a doctor came in and the nurse was like, oh, hey, do you want to check if she's dilated? And she checks me and she's like, oh yeah, you're fully dilated, you're ready to push. And I was like, oh my gosh, like it really like hit me that I'm having a baby now, because now I've just been hanging out, just chilling, and now I have to actually deliver a child. It was just kind of a slap in the face with reality. So when they told me that I was ready to start pushing, the nurse said that I needed to pee again because I think because having a full bladder will get in the way of delivering the baby, I think. Anyways, so I was like, okay, round 2 of me trying to get this pee out of me. If I can't do it, I'm getting a catheter, and we can't have that happen. Josh is awake at this point, obviously. So the nurse leaves the room. I get Josh's help. This time I don't like rearrange my feet. I just kind of sit on the cardboard thing, which I didn't do it the first time because I didn't think this cardboard cup could like support my weight. Sure enough, it can. So I'm sitting there going pee 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 pee. Josh is like turning on all the taps in the room and like doing his best to try and help me pee, and I'm like, oh, like I don't think it's happening, and I keep trying, and sure enough, I'm like, call the nurse in, I can't do this, I can't get my urine out. Nurse comes in, pulls the cup out, and she's like, oh yeah, you peed. And I was like, oh my gosh, thank you, Lord. Like I was so sure that I was getting a catheter, and I've never been so happy to see urine in my life. Oh, also, I should add that the whole like peanut ball between my legs thing ended up working well, and it turned Rook right side up. So I set up the camera to film all of the pushing because I didn't want to miss when Rook actually came out of me, and I'll play all that footage at the end. I ended up pushing for 2 hours, which is a long time, but in the moment didn't feel that long. And also they say a first-time mom typically pushes for an hour, and if they have an epidural, it usually adds an hour. So really I was just like right on track. But anyways, I'm getting ahead of myself. So the midwife comes in and we set up for me to start pushing. So at this point, I couldn't feel my contractions at all, like not even the tightening. They were definitely still happening, but I think my epidural was too strong for me to feel them, so I had to get the nurse to tell me like, okay, push now. And it's true what they say about like pushing is really hard when you can't feel what's going on, because you're just trying to push, but you don't know where to put your energy because you can't feel the response from your body. So they had the like monitor on my belly that tracks my contractions. So the nurse would say, you're having a contraction, I would be holding my legs and I'd be pushing. Also, what I didn't expect is that they didn't do the whole like counting down from 10 while I push thing. It was kind of left to my own control, if that makes sense. She said that she wanted me to do 3 pushes each contraction. So basically I would take a deep breath in, scrunch down, and push until I needed to take another quick breath, push, and another quick breath, and push, and just kind of leave it up to however long I could push for. Which was fine, except like it's so much scrunching of your face and scrunching of your body that I was getting like a headache from the pressure in my eyes. And also it's just, if you didn't know, pushing is freaking exhausting. Like I was having a heyday at the hospital until they told me to start pushing. Labor, super easy. Delivery, a freaking workout. And I see these labor and delivery vlogs on YouTube where these girls are just like, baby. That was not me. I was like sweating like all my effort down into getting this baby out. Also, it was 2 hours, right? So that's a long time to be putting all your effort into something. So the midwife and the nurse were super supportive, and Josh was awesome and encouraging me to get this friggin' baby out. I'm switching positions a lot to try and like help him kind of shimmy down. They said switching positions will help. I'm getting very hot at this point, I remember, because like I said, it's a workout. Josh is passing me water often. Eventually he gets me a hair tie so I can put my hair up. I didn't realize it at the time, but I was running a fever. Like they were just throwing out there like, oh, she's getting quite warm, and like they were taking my temperature periodically. And then at one point she just like gives me pills to take, and I take them not thinking much of it, but it's because I had a fever and they were concerned. And that progressed into me getting like a cold towel around my neck. I got very nauseous at one point, and I got a puke bucket because I was very certain I was gonna puke, but I held it down, which I'm very grateful for. I'm not like one to be scared of puking, but I was just already busy with something I didn't want to deal with also throwing up. So there was that. The other issue we had, which again, the staff was so good about keeping everything calm and nothing's a big deal, everything's great until they know something's actually wrong, right? But Rook's heartbeat kept dropping, or they weren't sure what was happening with his heartbeat. They said that it was just a little confusing to them and they wanted to get a better idea of what was going on with him, so they actually attached a probe to his head, like in me, so that they could get a more accurate reading of his heart, because they think that they were periodically picking up my heartbeat thinking that it was his, and an adult's heartbeat is way too slow for a baby, so they were concerned. Anyways, but they handled it well. I didn't even know what the heck was going on. I just kind of agreed and went with it. So at this point, I've been pushing for like, I think an hour and a half, I don't know. And they say, oh, your baby has lots of brown hair. And I was like, oh my gosh, my baby has brown hair. Like, I didn't expect that I would get that information before the baby came out. And I was like, wow, like this is the first time we're getting real information about our baby, because we don't know anything about our baby, boy or girl, blonde or brunette, like because Josh is a blonde, I'm a brunette, it could have gone either way. And so yeah, they said brown hair, and I was like, oh my gosh, like so much motivation to get this baby out so I can find out more about him. So eventually I started to feel when my contractions would happen, which helped a lot with me controlling what was going on, but still I was having a really hard time figuring out how to push, because I would push and the midwife would say, that's perfect, keep doing that, but I can't feel what I'm doing, so I can't really recreate it. So basically we just had to play around with positions. What really worked for me was having a bar over the bed that I could put my feet up on, then they wrapped a towel around the front of it and I could like pull myself in and push with my legs, and that just kind of lined me up perfectly to deliver. Otherwise it was like, okay, curve your back, pull your legs in, arch your shoulders, and push. Like, it was just too many things to focus on because I'm just trying to follow a list to not respond to what my baby's doing. Again, I will say, I would much rather push for 2 hours and not feel a thing than push for a half hour and feel a baby coming out of me. So like, it was fine. I accepted the fate that I had given myself. So again, I'm pushing, and eventually they say, oh, his head is staying like partially out between pushes now. And that was so exciting. I like got to feel his head before he came out. So then yeah, at around that 2 hour mark, his head was basically out, and they said, okay, like you're gonna push the baby out now. And I was like, but I'm not having a contraction. And they said, you don't need one. And I was like, okay. So she tells me to do a combination of pushing and panting, and then all of a sudden Rook was out, and she said, I don't even remember what she said, but she said something like, look, here's your baby. And I was like, oh my gosh, there's my baby. Obviously in shock. It was the most amazing experience. I didn't even think though that like, oh, what's the gender? We've been waiting to find out what the gender is. Wasn't even on my mind. I was just like, oh my god, there's a baby. And then Josh looks over and checks the gender, and he turns to me and he says, we have a son. And then I just broke down crying, like so excited. Obviously we were gonna be fine with either a boy or a girl, but I really wanted Josh to have a son because I'm just really excited for him to be the dad of a boy. And so I just got very emotional, obviously. And yeah, they put him on my chest and I was weeping, Josh was weeping, like just the most beautiful time of our lives. It was the best experience. Like, again, it was so much work pushing him out, but honestly, like, it was such a dream. The whole experience, even the painful labor at the beginning, the waiting and not progressing in the middle, like, it was the best. Yeah, so I guess now I'll roll the clip of my delivery vlog.
And push. Keep going. Oh yeah, you're moving your baby. That is so good. Excellent.
She's not feeling that. So
Yeah.
do you want me to
Maybe
tell you?
helping? Yeah, because we
I-
should be pushing every single one.
Yeah.
Is it another one?
Yeah.
Excellent. And push.
Oh, my face feels like it's about to explode.
Oh.
What I'd like to do, it's called a scalp electrode, and it's a monitor that I can attach just to the top of your baby's head, and it allows us to get a more accurate reading of the heart rate. I do have a bit of concern. It's hard for us to interpret. Can you flip over again? So if I put that on the top of the baby's head, we can get a really accurate idea, so I know if I need to worry or not.
Sure.
Okay.
Yep. Sounds good.
I think what I'll do, I'm just gonna get Jen to come
Yeah.
in and just give us a look see.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not that it's super, the heart rate's not super bad, but it's not,
It's hard to, yeah.
it's hard to interpret. So I would like, that's a good way of putting it. It's
Yeah.
hard to interpret it like a second to look at.
Camera
A
now.
little warm. Can you turn the temperature down?
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, that's progress. I'm seeing it. Ooh, that's so good, honey.
That's awesome.
You are
Very
doing
good.
so
Very
good. You made good progress on that. The little cord was moving out with the baby's head.
Yeah,
It's
see,
good.
you can see the cord
Yeah, it
move
was
now.
good.
Yeah.
You did so good.
Can you see?
I can just see the cord coming out.
because it's attached to the top of the baby's head. So when you push, we see it move, and then it slips back in when you stop just a little, and then it moves out more. Push, 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 push. That's it, that's it, that's it. Very good.
Yeah.
Very good.
Okay, good work.
Yeah, we were giving her a bolus and 1 gram of Tylenol.
What's the mash?
Like her temperature was 37. Yeah. So, and Jen was just in to review the strip as well. We have an electrode on it, so we have a really good accurate read.
Good.
Okay. Yeah. Otherwise, fluid's clear. I think we'll have a baby pretty soon here.
Nice.
Yeah, won't be long. Good.
Not too much water.
We'll have a baby before dinner. That's
Nice and
my
swallow.
prediction.
Exciting.
Okay, here we go.
Yep. Yeah,
That's
good.
it. Push, 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 push.
Keep
Yes,
this hip
that's
open. Keep
it.
the
That's
hip
the
open.
spot.
You're good to go.
Excellent.
You're doing
Excellent.
so well, honey. You are doing
Good.
amazing.
It's been
Pushing for like an hour?
yeah, an hour and 10 minutes, an hour and 20 minutes.
You're doing well. It's quite normal with an epidural and first baby to have to push for more than 2 hours, so yeah.
It's not going back as far that time.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Make
Excellent.
you proud,
You
excited.
can maybe even do the bar with her feet up on the bar.
Yeah.
Do you think?
Yeah.
You want to give it a shot, honey?
Yeah.
Yeah? Almost like a stirrup setup?
Yeah, kind of.
Perfect.
So you push the baby so low that time that the baby's hair could stick out. Yeah, no, it was. Oh, I don't feel good. I might puke. Yeah, the box.
Okay.
That's okay.
It's got to be in there, okay? You're pushing so hard, so strong, okay? Just lean forward and puke into there if you have to, okay, honey? Okay? Okay. You're almost there. Do you want to
You're
sip
gonna
of
be
water?
alone before you know it.
Yes, you are.
You want to sip of water, honey? No. You're doing really well?
Maybe we'll get the, I know she's pushing well, but maybe we'll get the bar out of the
way?
so I can, yeah.
Okay, we'll let it rest for a second.
Okay.
Oh,
Stay
now.
Oh, it's gonna be
Got your little head staying up there.
Yeah,
You're so
and
close.
yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. Reach down. It's your baby. Right there.
It's coming, honey. Fight's almost over. Fight is almost over,
Stay
sweetie.
now. So
you
when
want
the
this-
head stays, it's just a few more pushes typically, and then the head comes out.
Strong, keep it
job.
strong.
That's it. That's it.
Keep it
It's
strong.
almost to the eyebrows.
Almost to the eyebrows.
Awesome, you're doing so well, Ash. You're doing so well. So well. You want to stay like
Actually, you
this or
should
do you want to
feel
let
the
that?
head now.
Yeah, feel it now. It's like
It's like
Really?
so much head. Well, I'm sure you can feel it.
you can move with your
It's out.
hand.
It's really out. It's coming.
Yeah.
Really proud of you.
Crazy, hey?
Really proud of you, Ash.
All right,
So
give me a
good.
push. Let's get your baby
Yeah,
out.
you can do this actually.
Deep breath and push. Yeah, even without one, it's fine.
Here you go, here you go.
Good
Push, push,
job.
push, push, push.
Oh,
Push,
amazing.
push, push, push,
You're doing
push.
so well, honey. I'm so
That's it.
proud of you. I'm
Beautiful.
so
That's
proud
it.
of
That's
you.
it.
You're bringing the baby out, okay? You're bringing the baby out.
Yeah, deep breath. And do it again.
Nice.
Nice work.
Those babies.
Nice.
Good.
That's it, that's it, that's
Good,
it.
good, good, good. You're doing really well,
That's
honey.
brilliant.
If I'm in the way, just move me out of the
So
way.
good, so good.
Nice. Big push, big push.
Okay, pant. Yeah, pant, 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 pant. Then just a little push. Yeah, pant.
Great.
Control.
You're doing so well, honey. You're doing so well. I'm so proud of you, Ash.
And push. And have your baby.
Good.
Good job.
A little bit more space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. We're crying already. Sorry.
Wow. That's not a small baby
That's
either.
not a small baby.
She did so good,
Great
honey.
work.
You did so good.
17:30 on the dot. Oh.
So proud of you, Ashley. So proud of you. You did so good.
You need to.
There
So
we
do you want to see what you had?
Oh. What did you have?
What did you have?
We got us some.
You got your story to tell there. Cut the cord.
So proud of you. I don't think I should.
I put him on? I don't think I should. That's
I don't think I should. I'm already feeling a little woozy.
You sit on that chair.
Good. I'm gonna clap and cut. I'm not sure.